Good morning, everybody. I'm Juanita Skillman, the president of United Mutual, and we're happy to welcome you today to our Meet the Candidates. I ask you please to turn off your phones, both of those of you on the dais and those of you in the audience. Acknowledging of the press, we are being filmed, and it will be on television and broadcast later, so they're doing us upstairs. I'd like to thank two people, our volunteers, Mary Stone and Maggie Blackwell, who helped in setting this up, and of course, our wonderful corporate secretary, Cheryl Silva. Now it's my privilege to introduce you to the moderator of today's session, Constance Sorensen, and she'll be sitting over here.
Thank you, Juanita. Good morning. Our lists of candidates that are running to fill 4 vacancies, each for a 3-year term, that expire in 2021 are as follows. Elsie Addington, Janie Dorrell, Anthony Liberatore, Sue Margolis, Gregory McLaughlin, Dorothy Pasella, who is not able to be with us today due to outpatient surgery, Carl Randazzo, Benjamin Shavit. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. Please be paying attention to the time so that you don't run over, and make sure that when you begin your statement to turn your mic on, and when you're through to turn the mic off. The sequence of these presentations will begin alphabetically. So we will begin with Elsie Addington.
Hi, I'm Elsie Addington. I'm sorry, I was going to swear I wasn't going to say Leisure World, but I just did. I'm at Laguna Woods Village. Has been in my backyard, as it were, since 1967. So I've seen a lot of changes here during the years. I was only 3 or 4 years old in 1967. But at any rate, the reason I came down to this part of Orange County was I went to UC Irvine, where I received eventually my bachelor's in history with an emphasis on Latin American studies. Through the years, I've also acquired 30 additional units of college-level accounting and business law. My business background, I was with IRS for 28 years in various positions. And I learned a lot about a lot of businesses and a lot of nonprofits and a lot of human nature during my 28 years. I spent 2 years as a program analyst with the Department of Defense at our beautiful MCAS El Toro, which is unfortunately no longer with us. And I miss it every day. And I remember the plane crash of 1967, incidentally, right here in Leisure World. I was a production manager for a direct mail advertising firm in Irvine for 3 years, during which time I was known as the junk mail princess of Orange County. I really was. My boss was the junk mail queen. My social and activities, such as they are, I was in Seroptimist International. I was sponsored by a dear friend of mine who lived right here. And I like Garden Plot. I like Ocean Club. And I'm about out of time, so please vote for me. Thank you.
Janie?
Hi, I'm Janie Durrell, and I have lived in United for 5 years. As an incumbent member of the United Mutual Executive Board of Directors, I'm asking for your consideration for the position as director. I was appointed to the United Board in 2016 after being an advisor on M&C and also GRF-CAC. I served as second vice president starting in 2017, and in February and March found me as acting president. After a special election was held, new executive officers were elected, and I was elected as first vice president, and again in 2018. I also serve on the United Board Executive Hearing Committee. I chair the Architectural Control and Standards Committee. We have worked closely with the staff, residents, and contractors to streamline our alterations and variance process, eliminating the time involved for approved alterations. We established standard policies such as soffits, split bathrooms, windows, doors, to name a few. I also serve on M&C and the Landscape Committee, along with being a member of GRF-CAC. We need to continue with our maintenance and construction programs and to keep our budget in line and expenses as low as possible. I believe directors' duty is to listen to staff's recommendations and directors' opinions, study the issues, evaluate them, and make reasonable decisions. I have strong leadership skills. I make sure that residents receive full information on issues and facts. I support the direction of our United Board with oversight on our finances and cost-efficient maintenance for our manors. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Anthony?
Good morning, directors, Madam Chair, and residents. The first week of November 2012, Linda, my wife, and I moved into our manor in United. The driving force for choosing United over Seal Beach was the Saddleback Memorial Hospital outside of Gate 2. Of course, we love the amenities, 7 pools, 7 clubhouses.
Excuse me, Anthony, can you turn your mic on, please?
Sorry. All right. Yeah, the first week in November 2012, Linda, my wife, and I moved into our manor in United. The driving force for choosing United over Seal Beach was the Saddleback Memorial Hospital. But of course, we love the amenities, 7 pools, 7 clubhouses, and I think now we have 3 active gyms, 36 holes of golf, and so many clubs and activities. As you might guess, we were looking for a secure and safe place to live out our lives. Now we can live happily ever after here in Shangri-La. However, there's some reality to be dealt with. Reality sets in and tells us, like a marriage, you have to work at it to keep Laguna Woods the place to retire. With this in mind, my 37 years in corporate America, along with my education, makes me an asset or a tool to be part of an effort to keep United vibrant, attractive, and welcoming community. And I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. Sue?
For those who do not know me, I want to tell you a little more as to who I am. I have lived in the village for over 15 years, and I love it here. I've been a supervisor in the Pottery, Glass Studios, and president of the Garden Center Club. I believe in volunteering. Last week with the Garden Center Club, I delivered 1,015 pounds of winter squash to the food bank from the garden. I spearheaded the farmers market event, which raised $500 for the food bank. I take emeritus classes and work out in the gym almost every day. When I retired, I joined the Peace Corps and served 2 years in Samoa. And each year I teach English in an underserved country. Next week, it will be Sri Lanka. I have a master's degree in mathematics. I have spent 25 years in management, both in the private and public sectors. I've worked for NASA on aviation projects and large electronic firms developing new products. I have a successful practice at getting projects out on time and under budget. I have a strong background in project management, quality assurance, measurement techniques, cost analysis, and return on investment calculations. I am running for the board because I think my skills I can contribute in making the place more efficient with cost savings.
Thank you, Sue. Would all of you make sure that your mics are off now? Next, Gregory.
Good morning. My name is Greg McLaughlin. I've been living in Laguna Woods for just about 8.5 months now. I originally grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I have a almost 50-year-old granddaughter, 50-year-old daughter and 3 grandchildren in Minnesota. I moved to St. Louis when I was 20 years old and got a BS in chemistry, analytical chemistry from the University of Missouri in St. Louis. So I've been working in the field of analytical chemistry for 52 years, and some of the companies I worked for were McDonnell Douglas, Mallinckrodt, where I worked on acetaminophen and precursors, Monsanto in St. Louis on Roundup, Lasso, and polymers. And then I worked, Beckman Instruments in Fullerton hired me and moved me to the East Coast. I was the first HPLC specialist and manager in the USA in the New York City, New Jersey area. Later, I moved into sales for 5 years at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And then I was promoted to work on a new product called capillary electrophoresis system in Palo Alto. And using a very strong team player-oriented philosophy, we were able to introduce an instrument in 2 years, which eventually got 90% of the world's market share in 6 months. And it usually took 5 years to get a product out. And then I eventually I moved back to the East Coast again, and I was in charge of 12 technical specialists between Washington and Maine with the overall goal to increase the technical competence of the sales force. Eventually, I moved down to Irvine, working for Irvine Pharmaceutical, and led teams developing more than 125 methods for pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies. Worked for Pearl Therapeutics for 2 years in COPD and asthma products, and then eventually I started my own analytical chemistry consulting company. And later in my closing statement, I'll tell you more about why I want to be on the board and what my own personal interests are. Thanks.
Thank you, Gregory. And Carl?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carl Randazzo. This past April, I was selected to serve out the remaining months of the term of a previous director. Now I am looking for your vote in this election to continue working as a member of the United Board. I am a degreed, licensed professional engineer. I spent 6 years in the U.S. Navy where I served on a nuclear-powered submarine. During that time, I learned the value of a strong work ethic, as well as how to be a team player, good listener, multitasker, and problem solver. Without these qualities, our missions could not be successfully completed with 140 people returning home safely. I applied these qualities throughout my over 40-year career where I was involved in design, engineering, construction, and project management of $100 million plus projects for industrial and power generation facilities. I strongly believe that anything can be achieved with hard work, the right attitude, persistence, and a well-thought-out goal. For example, after I left the Navy, I completed my engineering degree at night, then earned my PE license, all while holding a full-time job as an engineer and married with 2 small children. That experience also taught me that it is essential to have a good sense of humor coupled with a healthy dose of perspective when the going gets tough. I have always believed that everyone's voice and viewpoint should be heard. In conjunction with that, I also believe that more things are successfully achieved when collaborating with others than when working alone. Remember, team can be an acronym for Together, Everyone Achieves More. I bring all my talents, skills, and experiences to my current position as a director on the United Board and look forward to continue in this role in order to contribute to the success of the Laguna Woods Village community. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carl. Benjamin?
Hi, my name is Benjamin Shavit. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the orientation, therefore...
Did you, excuse me, did you put your mic on?
Oh, here we go. Thank you.
There.
So I have no prepared text, organized text, so I'm going to talk directly from my heart. I lived here in 3 years, and I am versatile by nature. I have many fields that I was involved in. My degree is in performing arts, but I am a business-minded, and I was involved. I'm a journalist, and I'm a life coach, and the recent business I was involved in, I owned a car wash. Big car wash with 30 people. It was the talk of the town. So I can offer my visions, my experience in life in many fields. And that's all I have to offer. And I guess that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to the question portion of today. These questions have been prepared, so each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. Each one of you will be given a different question. We will just ask you the question and use that 1.5 minutes to respond to it. We don't need anyone commenting on what they are responding. If we could just leave it to the candidate to respond, we would appreciate that. So our first question is going to go to Elsie. The question is, what talents and expertise do you think you can bring to the board?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I retired from the biggest nonprofit organization probably in the world, which would be the U.S. government. And you want to talk about team playing. I mean, just think about it. I had I don't even know where to start, but organizational skills, planning and scheduling, I can form a team, I can dissolve a team, I can hire, I can fire, I can support. I've dealt with labor issues, management issues, reorganizations, budget problems, and it's all in a day's work. I've always been a good support person for a team. I don't know what else to say. If the job needs to get done, I'll take care of it. Just tell me what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Janie, are you familiar with the village website and how United's governance documents are posted? And explain, please.
Good question. I am not a very good computer person, and I know they're there. And if I really needed to look at them, I would figure that out or call for help. I do have the hard copy and look up what I need to when necessary.
All right, thank you. Anthony, are you familiar with the Davis-Sterling Act and California Corporation Codes?
Yes, I am. I'm very familiar with that, and also with Robert's Rules Study Club. As a matter of fact, I'm president of that club this year, so pretty familiar with it. And there are some differences, and this Davis-Sterling Act, of course, comes ahead of our Robert's Rules, which, by the way, is you can find in Article 13, Section 2 of your bylaws.
Thank you. Sue, do you understand the legal and fiduciary responsibilities you will be held to as a member of the United Board?
I understand both of those things. I don't have a legal background, but I have worked with lawyers before, and I understand that we do have a lawyer to assist us on that. The fiduciary responsibilities I am very clear on, and I have no problem in putting together a budget, working to make sure that we're cost effective, that we have analysis and return on investment. And I would be quite willing to work very hard to get the budget in place with our goals in mind and reduce costs any way we can. Thank you.
And thank you. Gregory, which committees would you like to be assigned to and why?
I guess
Your mic, please.
I have it, I turned it on. But anyway, I guess that I'd like to be involved in the committee that's involved in landscaping and environmental type concerns and things like that, because I have a pretty strong background, and hopefully I could use some of my technical expertise to help them, and most importantly is I think what we always need to do is get feedback from the owners throughout the whole community, and then find out how we can match their concerns and fix things if necessary, but also keeping it in consideration with the overall goals of the management team in this division or in United Mutual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, what is your experience working in group problem-solving situations?
First off, in the last 6 months, I've been working on the board as a member of the team for the board, and we've had plenty of problem solving in that particular respect. I have also been involved with projects whereby I was the project manager, and as a result of that, I would get input from all of my people, always listening to everything that they had to say, because listening is the most important part of a team, okay? You have to listen to what the problem is and not specifically have your canned response right away, okay? And as a result of that, I was able to get my team together to provide input to that particular problem resolution, and together we worked out this resolution of the problem, and as a result of that, we were able to succeed and get that problem resolved. That's my experience.
Thank you. Benjamin, what is your vision of our community? What would you like to achieve during your term of office?
Well, there are so many things involved in developing anything. And I have visions. I'm an idea man. I have experience in life and in business. And that's what I have to offer in any situation. I studied business. I know business. I know money. I know how to make money and, of course, how to lose money. So that's what I have to offer.
Thank you. All right, Janie, as our community ages, maintenance of our facilities and infrastructure has become a pressing issue. What would you do to address this problem?
Being on MNC, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Being as an advisor for 3 years on MNC and also as a vice president of the MNC committee, I look at and listen to and understand what we have with our infrastructure, our problems that we have, how we're coming about working with staff, resolving our situation. And we have to look at the problems that we have are water intrusion. If we can take care of the leaking of our pipes, our drain pipes and our sewer pipes and all, putting a lot more money and effort into that part of our problem with our infrastructure, we will eliminate eventually the costs of our water intrusion. We do have a lot of projects ahead of us. We have to replace hot water heaters. We have to go ahead and look at some of our Pushmatic panels that we have to replace. And we also have to look at inflation, what inflation is ahead of us when we're working on our budgets in order to handle all of these problems in the future for our shareholders, not just now, but 50 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Anthony, is there a specific community issue that was recently handled by the board that you would have handled differently?
I don't think I've found anything that the board has handled recently that I find distasteful or I don't agree with. You know, I'm really was into this trust agreement thing because I'm not an expert on trusts. But now the boards have affirmed the going on for the trust, so I go along with that. But I haven't had any major heartburns with anything that United has done recently. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue, what talents and expertise do you think you can bring to the board?
Well, I think I've enumerated them. I have strong project management, quality assurance, measurement techniques, cost analysis, and return on investment. I have managed large projects over multi-millions. I have had staffs of 1,000 people. I have worked with contractors, writing specifications, and making sure that we get what we wanted delivered. So I think I have a lot of talent in the business area. I have worked with a lot of different people on a lot of different projects and a lot of different levels. I've done a lot of training, mentoring, etc., which I think we need some of here.
Thank you. Gregory, are you familiar with the village website and how United's governance documents are posted? And please explain.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually, I'd say, extremely computer literate guy, and I have everything on the top of my in my home computer. I have links to all the Laguna Woods documents and every single thing very well, easily characterized, and so I can access any of the documents if I had my computer on in seconds. It would be very easy for me.
Thank you. Carl, are you familiar with the Davis-Sterling Act and California Corporation Codes?
Yes, I'm familiar with the Davis-Sterling Act and the California codes. In our meetings in the last 6 months, I was exposed to that various portion of being a board member. I also was given a book that provides all of that level of detail. So yes, I am familiar with it. Do I know everything in that book? No, I do not. But I am definitely familiar with all of the information that was presented to us, and I've been working with that information as part of the board for the last 6 months.
Great, thank you. Benjamin, do you understand the legal and fiduciary responsibilities you will be held to as a member of the United Board?
In general, yes, but not in details. And I know the responsibilities, and yes.
Thank you. Elsie, which committees would you like to be assigned to and why?
Maybe the landscape. Oh, I would really like to be on a committee that has to do with recycling. I have a lot of ideas about the recycling issues. You know, I think a lot of it's just people don't know how they're messing up the recycling. I'm passionate about recycling. And also landscape, I would like to be on that. And mostly I want to be on the committee that learns how we all work. And I know there isn't a committee like that, but this place just fascinates me. The 50 years of self-governance is just a blessing. I think it's just so interesting, but I'm sure there's not a committee for that. So I guess landscaping and recycling.
Thank you. Janie, what is your experience working in group problem-solving situations?
I've had quite a bit of experience as a volunteer in my past, along with being working with the committee that I chair, which is what I do. I call it real quickly as a alterations committee. We have situations in my past where I sit down and I evaluate the problem. I look at from point A to point B how, as a team player, we can resolve a situation, and we all get together and have a good solution. And with the alterations committee, we have a lot of situations where we're looking into changing and making it a lot easier for our members and our contractors, where we have situations that need to be looked at and come up with solutions where we can have standardized projects instead of having to go through a long process of getting some of our contractors' needs resolved in a little quicker manner.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you, let's see where I'm at here. Anthony, What is your vision of our community, and what would you like to achieve during your term of office?
What I'd like to achieve is to bring harmony and unison to the community through working with the board. You know, I come from corporate America where we didn't rule by consensus. Here, we're ruling by consensus. And in order to be successful, we have to find a way to listen to each other so that we can address problems, analyze them, and decide on a method of solving the problems. So that's really basically the whole reason I'd like to be on the board, is because problem solving has been always part of my issue at work. I worked with casual labor that we hired on a daily basis. And so I had to get them together to get jobs done. And I feel we have some great people here. And if we can listen to each other, we can problem solve. And that's why I'd like to be on the board.
Thank you. Sue, as our community ages, maintenance of our facilities and infrastructure has become a pressing issue. What would you do to address this problem?
Well, I think we need to prioritize what is done, and we need to look at what we have as far as techniques to solve these problems. New things are coming out at all times, and we need to get the latest and greatest in order to solve the problems. We need to prioritize and budget and make sure that we are doing cost-effective changes in all of our modifications that we do. The problem I see is a lot of the projects done here have to be done more than one time because they aren't done correctly. So we need to make sure that we study the project, make sure that it is a viable project, and go forward with measurements and make sure it's cost-effective and return on investment.
Thank you. Gregory, is there a specific community issue that was recently handled by the board that you would have handled differently?
Actually, because I haven't been here very long, but I've seen examples, say like even just in the most recent board meeting that I attended, where there was a huge outcry of the people like talking about Roundup and issues like that. And I thought that was terribly interesting, but also I thought that the way the board has been directing the people to do the studies and things like that on, not only on Roundup, but the replacement things that they've chosen was very well thought out, and also some of the technical aspects that they picked on how to sample things like that were interesting and would prove whether or not it would be a good, successful candidate. So that's an example of something that I just saw, which is being implemented currently.
Thank you. And Carl, what talents and expertise are you going to be bringing to the board?
Well, I think in my opening statement, I specifically indicated that my talents have to do with team playing, good listener, multitasker, problem solver, and I also bring the fact that I had a 40-year career in the construction, engineering, and project management business. And as I said before, team playing is the most important part of that whole concept, because if you may specifically come in to a group and say, gee, I have all this knowledge and you have to listen to me because I know best, okay? That's not the way we need to do business on the board. We do business with consensus, and that's what I bring, with the fact that I'm a good listener, I'm a team player, and I always try to go towards consensus. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin, are you familiar with the village website and how the United's governance documents are posted? Explain.
Not really. I do receive whatever I receive, I go over them. And briefly, and because I never had a reason to study them, you know, but no.
Okay. All right, let us go to Elsie. Are you familiar with the Davis-Sterling Act and California Corporation Codes?
No,
Okay,
I've heard of it. And I'm familiar with a few of the California corporation codes, but no, my legal background is almost exclusively federal. So
Okay.
I don't know, but I could find out.
right. All right, and Janie, do you understand the legal and fiduciary responsibilities you will be held to as a member of the United Board?
Yes, I do. Do I need to comment more? We as board members are public officials, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to our board, to our corporation, and to our members. And as far as legal, we are pretty much bound by, when you look at the Davis-Sterling Act, and also try to stay within the limits of my friend here and his Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you. Anthony, which committees would you like to be assigned to and why?
I really have no preference. In my last tenure as a United Director, I was chosen to head two committees, the Ad Hoc Water Committee, which was actually the Ad Hoc Toilet Committee, and I was also on the Walkway Lighting Committee. And one thing about the Ad Hoc Committee is you have a job to do. And when the job is over, the committee is done, whether you acknowledge it or not. And the Ad Hoc Water Committee was very successful. We were coming in ahead of schedule and way below budget. And the Walkway Lighting Committee, and I want to tell you also, I couldn't have done it without the staff. We had great staff here, even under PCM. And so being assigned a committee is a challenge that I would accept. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue, what is your experience working in group problem-solving situations?
I've worked in large groups and small groups, and I've worked with all kinds of people of all levels of ability, and I find it a challenge, and I believe in consensus, and I believe in teamwork, and I believe listening is the most important thing. We have to have mutual respect and not worry about when somebody talks about your project negatively. It is not a personal thing. It is what they need to know. And I work very well in listening to people and adapting to what they have to say and trying to bring in and change the project so that it reflects their opinions as well as mine.
Thank you. Gregory, what is your vision of our community, and what would you like to achieve during your term of office?
I guess my vision of the community has been, so far I've been here relatively recently, and I've really enjoyed the community, and I'll tell you more later in my closing statements about, say, the activities I'm been involved in. But I'd like to see the community grow and where people, say, for example, like if they're interested in wood shop or whatever, like in any type of activities. We have an awful lot, but eventually we'll also need to learn, as the population is growing, how to handle the more increasing problems that will happen in the aging population and how we can help them. I think that's one of the things I'd like to be involved in the future.
Thank you. Carl, as our community ages, maintenance of our facilities and infrastructure has become a pressing issue. What would you do to address this problem?
Well, currently, as a board member, we are addressing many of the issues that for which we have problems right now. And at this particular point in time, we need to continue with this. The Drain lines that have problems, okay, we're lining the drain lines, and that's a very important thing because you can have as many amenities as possible, but if you come back to your manor after going to the pickleball court and you have water all over your floor, okay, that's a problem, okay? So we need to address any of the drain line issues. We also have electrical infrastructure problems whereby you go to the pickleball court and you come back and you find out the lights are off in your house because of the fact that there's a problem with the electrical infrastructure. As a member currently of the Energy Task Force, we're trying to address all of that. Plus, I'm also a member of the M&C Committee, whereby we're addressing some of these infrastructure issues with regard to plumbing and electrical. So that's where I see it. And I think that we're working towards that goal currently on the board.
Thank you. Benjamin, is there a specific community issue that was recently handled by the board that you may have handled differently?
I can't remember one specific thing, so I will not waste time in remembering. However, I want to say that every good thing is subject to be better. And to every situation, a good situation, there is a way to have a better situation. Whether it's whatever it is, whether it's negotiation or whatever it is. So, but I can't answer specifically to your answer.
All right, thank you. All right, that will be the end of our questioning portion. So what now I would like you to do is you'll have 2 minutes to have a closing statement. So I would like to have you start with, and we'll start with Benjamin, so we'll start the back way. We'll start the opposite way when we started. So if you will give your closing statement, we would appreciate that. And
What would the closing statement entail?
what you kind of would like to bring to the board, some of your philosophies, some of your ideas. And you have, again, 2 minutes?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Make sure your mic is on so we can hear you, okay?
Okay. I hate to be redundant, but I have said what I can bring to the board. My experience in life. I am an excellent negotiator. I am a visionary. I am a businessman. I dealt with people all my life, and I believe that the art of negotiation is one great asset that a person could have, and I think I have that. My visions and my experience.
Thank you. Carl?
As a member of the United Board, I am one of 11 members who investigate, plan, and vote on issues which affect our mutual. The Director's Code of Conduct for United, which is required to be signed by each board member as they join the board, states the following. A director must, quote, make all decisions and actions in good faith and in consideration of the best interests of the United and not in the best interest of the individual or faction of the community, unquote. As a result, I do not and cannot have an individual platform or agenda outside of what is best for our community. Since I have been a member of the United Board, I have fulfilled those words and been part of that team. However, I do have a vision for our community. We are a thriving, active community with a variety of needs and wants that must be addressed, but these must also be balanced with our responsibilities as stewards for the resources of our community. We are living in a physical environment which is aging along with us. It presents us with the challenge of keeping up with proper maintenance and necessary upgrades to our overall infrastructure and various amenities, while keeping their costs reasonable. As we move forward in this 21st century, we must use emerging information and new technologies that are available to us to continue to work towards the goals of keeping this community vibrant and thriving, as well as cost-effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I'm sorry, Carl. Gregory, would you?
Yes. Anyway, to begin with, I said I would tell you briefly some of the things that I've been involved with at Laguna Woods. So anyway, I played for the softball team on Monday mornings. I play bocce fairly often, petanque. I've been shooting archery. I play bridge frequently. Once in a while, do lawn bowling. I ride my bike about 50 miles a week, and I go swimming pretty much every night. And I periodically shoot pool and will play golf. So anyway, obviously that'll be too much I won't be doing all that when if I get involved in the board. I can prioritize things. And so anyway, I've succeeded in all my jobs in my life using some of my own personal philosophical beliefs, which are, for example, I'm a very good multitasker to work on multiple problems. I'm honest. I work hard and smart to go beyond normal effort and believe that will pay off in the long terms. I believe that challenging problems can be solved using effort, logic, and persistence. And when I changed into my different roles, I was able to learn and succeed in new positions by refocusing my mind and energies to whatever was needed to accomplish the job. I listen to people carefully and guide them to success. So if I'm given the honor to serve on the board, I will represent all homeowners with honesty and integrity. I will serve with an open mind and ear to keep Laguna Woods fiscally sound. I want Laguna Woods to be a safer and friendlier place to live and make this a kinder, gentler place with greater home input, access, and participation. And my main goal in joining the board is to find out what is most important to the residents of Laguna Woods and to represent their interests in a balanced manner to be consistent with the needs of the United Mutual Board and policies of VMS. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. Sue?
I'm of the opinion that the most important qualities our board can have is open, friendly, united decisions and making in an atmosphere of mutual respect for our shareholders at Laguna Woods. I'm a high-energy, creative person and believe in consensus. I'm a team player, and I do not believe in saying no or denied. I believe that it's usually possible to make any situation into a win-win. I can listen when my ideas are being attacked and not take it personally, and try to understand others' concerns and work them into the final product. Many projects done by VMS staff seem to take more than one iteration to correctly complete. I would like to see management put in place corrective action plan so that the inefficiencies of doing things more than once is eliminated. I think there should be more participation by residents. We have a very talented community, and we need to make use of their strengths to address issues on all fronts. We need to make it easy to tap on residents for short-term projects. Today, with all the computer systems in place, much online data is being collected, and it needs in-depth review so strategic goals can be set and measurements put in place so we know how we're doing against the goals. I've taught computer science and data structures at the college level. I am very computer savvy. But primarily, I will work for a transparent governance in which everyone has the right to an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Anthony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are poised and ready to do great things for United. We have the talent here. And if we can merge our talents by listening to each other, we're due to do great things. And I like to quote, "The great lessons for democracies to learn is for the majority to give the minority a full, free opportunity to present their side of the case. Then, for the minority, having failed to win a majority to their views, gracefully to submit and to recognize the actions as that of the entire organization and to cheerfully to assist in carrying it out until they, the minority, can secure its appeal. and that's from Henry M. Roberts. And you'll find that in the forward section of the 11th edition on page 49. And Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity to address our residents. And if chosen by the residents, I will faithfully carry out the fiduciary responsibilities of a United Director. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gregory, or Anthony. Janie.
Within my past experience, I was honored with many awards and accomplishments. Best of all, and the fun of all of it, was the hug lady for our troops in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, as I was an administrative assistant for Saudi Aramco. I've been a corporate relocation director, owner of a Century 21 real estate office, and owner of Silver Lake Resort in the Dune Lake area, which was a lot of fun and a lot of work. There are many concerns and many policy decisions that have been discussed and approved since I have served on the United Board. Looking forward, infrastructure is one of my main concerns. We need to continue with our maintenance construction programs to preserve our housing in United for another 50 years by budgeting through our reserve plan for waste lines, copper water lines, electrical panels, water heaters, building structures, dry rot, landscape, and tree maintenance. The board needs to be very aware of the inflation figures that are coming this next year and need to keep all of our costs as low as possible. As an incumbent director, I work diligently with our United Board and the VMS staff to stay on budget and provide necessary services. I seek your continued support and vote to ensure United remains properly managed and maintained for the beneficial interest of existing and future United shareholders. With a smile and a big hug, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Elsie?
My background in public service has made me adept at working within strict legal guidelines while still serving the public in vastly diverse situations. I've also absorbed the philosophy of nonprofit organizations whereby service in favor of the greater good is more important than profit and personal enrichment. My mother also reflected this philosophy, although she was a school teacher, but it's the same idea. She knew how much she was going to make. She knew what the deal was. She was never going to get wealthy. She became a teacher because she loved teaching. And I, in turn, love serving the public in different ways than teaching. Rather than profit and personal enrichment. I guess I said that. Laguna Woods means a lot to me. I would like the opportunity to work with people that keep this wonderful place so pleasant to live in. And I've watched Laguna Woods over the years, and I just don't want it to change that much. And I still have just a second. I wanted the problem-solving question because in teamwork, I was once a participant on a task force of, it was the Drug Enforcement Administration, Internal Revenue Service, as well as what used to be called Customs, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it was mostly males and some females. And everybody had an ego the size of this room, right? And we had 4 conflicting rules of law and bodies of law and desires and needs. And you know what? We put a lot of bad guys away because we all came together, did just what Anthony was talking about, discussed things like Janie. We were courteous and listened to each other and put people in jail. I just had to mention that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank all of you candidates. You bring something to the people. There's quite a variety of expertise and skills, and it's exciting, and your willingness to be a volunteer in doing this. There's a few things, dates that I want you to remember. There is a Association of Condos and Co-ops event on Monday, August the 20th at 4 p.m. In Clubhouse 3, Dining Room 2. Also, the Friends of the Village event will be on Tuesday, August the 21st at 6 p.m. in Clubhouse 3, but in Dining Room 1. The ballots will be mailed on Monday, August the 27th. They are due back on Wednesday, September the 26th. And the ballot counting will be taking place on Friday, September the 28th at 1:30 in the boardroom. The annual meeting and organizational meeting will be held on Tuesday, October the 9th at 9:30 a.m. with a luncheon immediately following in Clubhouse 2. Thank you again for all of you being here today.